Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony Pensa at the Level Wisdom Podcast. I'm sorry for not uploading a few weeks ago. Unfortunately, I've been really busy with work. I've been doing a lot of stuff lately, and I've been working, and I haven't actually had time to upload information. So I'm trying to actually figure this out too. I'm uploading this video on my channel here, and I've been actually trying to get equipment for my channel. But aside from all that, thank you for joining this podcast. Again, if you're not familiar with my podcast, you can find me on Instagram at the Love of Wisdom 424 here. I post videos here on YouTube, on information related to philosophy and its embedment for other people's lives. Now, today's topic we're talking about is consciousness. And what defines consciousness? What is consciousness, and how can we come to know what consciousness is? I'm doing this series, a 5-part series on consciousness and the idea and reality of consciousness. And to be honest with you guys, there's just a lot of things that are really complicated and complex to talk about, and I can't actually put this on a 5-series video. But it's just a summary, just to add a summary to it, the summation. It is quite challenging and it is fun to do, but there are a lot of difficulties when it comes to actually making this video. But I will begin to state that when I left off on my last video, consciousness itself is a state of awareness, a state of being that people are a part of. When you look at consciousness and you look at the Eastern and Western philosophies of consciousness, oftentimes it looks as if there's a clear distinction on what consciousness is, right? Like, what is consciousness? Like, how do you define consciousness? How do you understand what consciousness is? There's the idea of a being, right, of consciousness. When you look at that consciousness of being in reality or being itself, it's hard to really define how to go about seeing consciousness in relationship to the world. So I think it's important to realize and to rationalize that there's more to the reality which we live in than simply how we view the world. And what do I mean by that? Well, consciousness itself, or the way we look at consciousness, or the definition of consciousness, is the state of being aware and awake of one's surroundings, the awareness or perception of something in a person, right? And there's synonyms: awareness, knowledge of the others, alertness, sensitivity, etc. What does that mean? How do we come to really know that? Because many times we look around our world and we look at the reality in which we live in and we just accept things for what they are. We're aware of the reality of the world. We're not truly aware of what it is it takes to understand that reality of which we live in. And with that in mind, I like to bring up the idea of metaphysics. Now, metaphysics is an ancient Greek philosophy, and it stems back very far during the ancient Greek time, from the pre-Socratics and the Socratics, about over 2,000 plus years ago, before many gods and deities had really existed. And there's the idea of the mind and matter that existed, and there's many philosophers that have talked about this. Now, later in my further podcast, further on, I'll be talking more about these philosophers and their importance in the understanding of consciousness and our reality, and the idea of consciousness itself. But I like to focus more on the notions of what consciousness is for this particular podcast, break it down for you, and then go further into the next podcast about who influenced consciousness, the evolution of it, the biology of it, even the chemistry of it. But particularly, I like to focus on the idea of consciousness to this particular podcast, so people even understand what it is, and then go into consciousness and its relationship to the physics of the world, or not even the physics itself, particularly quantum physics. So to continue with what I was mentioning, when you look at consciousness and you look at the reality of consciousness, there's this idea, right? There's this notion of consciousness existing because of a mind. Now, there's some YouTube videos out there actually that I've been looking at that correspond to what consciousness is. And one of these videos, it actually says that consciousness originates from the idea of awareness of a being of itself and the work that it produces. So you have a being and you have this idea of work, and that consciousness is created from that being. A lot of scientists say it's primordial, it existed billions of years ago, and from there it corresponds to the idea of a mind. And the idea of a mind is, it says, is an element of a person that enables them to be aware of the world and the experiences to think. So the idea essentially of thinking and using your mind to correlate to, I don't know, consciousness. Like, how do we think? How do we understand our faculties of thought? And from there, that leads into the second notion, from the idea of a mind to that of a thinking object or thinking thing. The process of one's mind, it says, to consider a reason about something. And then the third thing it mentions is reason, right? What is reason? Is it a cause, or is it an explanation, or a justification for an event or action? Following reason, there's a notion of cause, which is a person, a thing that gives one to an action, phenomenon, or condition. And from there, we have what's known as a phenomenon, which is used throughout science and throughout many fields. It describes as a fact or situation that is observed to exist or happen, especially when one cause or explanation is in question. And then there's many examples of this, but then we get on to further ideas. Now, when we explain phenomenon or all the four notions, right, we talk about mind, we talk about matter, we talk about the ability of thinking, the ability of reasoning. We then come to the idea of a correlation between that. Now, in this world, oftentimes, even in my perspective, there's that notion of religion and its influence on people. Religion itself has been a core influence in America, and it's been a core influence throughout the world. But oftentimes when we think about religion in our life, but not so much focusing on religion, but the idea of the reality of religion upon the world, upon people's lives, it's often hard for me to even begin to describe what it is that people believe and think about. So what I'm trying to really focus on my podcast is how bring out the notion, bring out the ideology of epistemology, of the study of truth and the ideas of how people come about their truth. And also I plan later on, actually, because I live in the city of, I live in California, and where I live in California, I go about my day in a small rural town, and I plan on actually doing podcasts, but particularly I plan on doing interviews in the downtown area in this farmer's market near where I live. And I like it to be where I can actually expose to people and show people the meanings and the thoughts and the ideas that which they themselves believe. The epistemology, essentially. Epistemology being a fancy Greek term that means episteme, which is the study of knowledge, the study of coming to know what you know and how you know what you know. And by doing that, we come to regions of sayings that, say for example, I believe the star or the sky or a star is blue. Right? Similar in the background, how you have what I have behind me. You have blue stars. How do I know that a blue star is blue? How do I come to determine in my beliefs that that star is blue? It could be anything that you believe, any thought or any idea, such as the existence of God, or that I'm a time traveler, or any idea that you think is true, that you hold true and hold firm. Epistemology is made to break down and look through that particular claim and its existence. So when we look at the reality which we live in and we look at our lives, consciousness is a really strong indicator of how we go about living that. Now, before I get into the physics, before I get into the deeper fundamental notions of consciousness, I want to reveal to people that the way we think, the reality, the awareness that's in our life is a substance. It's a physical thing. And this will lead into my further thought that what we think, what we consider as reality, what we consider as truth even, what we consider as fundamental understandings is a product of the mind. Now that's a bold claim because there's many religious people that I know that will argue with me otherwise in saying that God is the reason why we have thoughts. God is the reason why we have a being, why we have eyes, nose, physical functions, right? That we even have the mental capacities that we do because there's a being outside of space and time, outside of this universe, outside of the Milky Way galaxy, outside of the galaxies and the universe itself that points out to the realities which we live in. But in actuality, there's been scientific proof and evidence that has demonstrated that we are not simply just beings that have been created from other beings, but we have evolved and we have created other notions. And that's a whole nother topic in and of itself. But what I want to really focus on essentially is the notion ideologies of epistemology, but this particular podcast will be focusing on a 5 series on consciousness itself and how we can use and how we can correlate consciousness. Now, I know people will have many questions from this video and many people have many thoughts if they watch this whole video in its entirety, but my name again is Anthony Pensa, and I want to introduce to you guys what consciousness is and give you a fundamental, deeper understanding of how we use it in our daily lives. And to break it down, there's so much more to consciousness than what people really perceive. There's the idea of our life and our perception, but I'll get further into it on a later video. There's a lot more I want to say. I also have to mention that I will be handing out business cards on my channel. I will be having business cards, and I will be promoting my channel and be making a website in the near future. I am on Facebook. You can find me at The Love of Wisdom, so you can see me and all my great activities that I'm doing. And you could also find me here, here in where I'm staying, here in Chico, California, Northern California, where I plan on doing it at the farmers market. So all the people in Chico who are watching this video, and also all the other people who are outside of Chico, please follow me. Please say hello. I will be starting to go to the farmers market actually this 2 or 3 weeks from now. I plan on actually doing real epistemology with real people and actually showing and helping people. So I will be recording hopefully within a few weeks, if not sometime within a few months, once I gather all the equipment that I need. But I do want to promote this ideology of philosophy and critical thinking, because so many people I know in this world actually do not have this ability, do not understand what I'm doing, do not promote what I'm doing, do not understand what it is that I'm doing for this channel. But I do have to also say that with philosophy, with this idea and the study and the search and the knowledge for truth, there are a lot of uphill battles, and there are a lot of issues and problems that arise from what I do, from mostly other people and not from myself. So for all the people that have questions, have comments, have concerns about my channel, you could always contact me and leave a comment below, and I will personally email you from my email, and we can have a direct conversation. Or you could Facebook message me, or if not, you can also, particularly you can YouTube, leave a comment below on the YouTube channel, and we can subscribe where it says right here below, The Love of Wisdom. Subscribe and we watch further videos. I'll be uploading videos every few weeks or so, but I just wanted to know any topics or ideas that people want to talk about, because I'll be hitting the streets of Chico, California sometime within a month and actually start interviewing people and their beliefs and why they believe what they believe. So hopefully you guys can follow me on my journey here on YouTube, and you can help assist me on bringing about change in people's thoughts and different ideologies. Otherwise, sorry for the long tangent, because I wanted to bring that up. That notion of consciousness and that notion of reality ties into the way people think, that notion of energy. So for the following podcast, just to break it down, we will be talking about energy and we will be talking about physics. So this is an introductory form of consciousness. And again, the following podcast will be on energy and physics related to consciousness. Now, thank you all for your time. Again, just to recap what we learned today, or at least what I taught today, consciousness is broken into 5 things. It's the mind, it's thinking, it's reason, it's cause, and it's phenomenon that has occurred. And science has proven this. And to break down what this is again, mind is the element of a person that enables them to be awarded of the world and the experiences that they think and to feel, the faculty of consciousness and thought. And then we have thinking, which is the process of using one's mind to consider a reason about something. Why you do the things that you do, because you think about them, right? Why it is that you get up in the morning and you wake up and you take a shower, because you think that you have to take a shower to be clean. Or it's just an autonomous feeling that you go through, perhaps. But that requires a thought. And from there is a causal reaction. So you thought to do something, so then you went to take a shower because you needed to take a shower, such and such, because you needed to continue your day, right? And then leads into that definition of cause, which is a person or thing that gives, right, use to an action, phenomenon, or condition. And then finally we have the phenomenon, or the fact or situation that is observed to exist or happen, especially one whose cause or explanation is in question. And thank you again so much for listening to my channel. My name is Anthony Pensa. This is The Love of Wisdom. Thank you so much. I love you all. I'll talk to you again.